I think the biggest part is if you really want to build, content, a community around content, and you want to get started, take the plunge. You really just got to do it, and you'll see how you feel about it once you've done it. You don't necessarily have to quit your job and go all into one thing. You can take baby steps, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And you can also do that while taking the plunge, right? They're not two things that are mutually exclusive.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. And today I'm really excited to talk to Afraz today, who is a senior software engineer working at Microsoft doing iOS development. And we're going to talk about content creation and why we both got into it, even though we work at these big companies, and what are the benefits and why maybe you should consider it as well. So before Microsoft, Afraz worked at Capital One, and then before that he was a consultant where he has published literally dozens and dozens of iOS apps. So he's definitely an expert in that field, and he runs a popular YouTube channel called iOS Academy, which has done really, really well. It has a lot of high quality content. I'll link that down below. But Afraz, welcome to the channel. I'm really excited to talk more about our journeys on YouTube and content creation in general.
Yeah, no, happy to be here. Yeah, like you mentioned, super well put together intro, much better than I probably would have done for myself. But yeah, I've been doing iOS for a while, and I think working in iOS at some larger companies. So happy to share how that has balanced out with content creation, especially this whole YouTube thing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. So why don't we actually get started right there, which is, what was your initial motivation to put videos or tutorials out on YouTube? I think there's like an obvious one, which is like, let's help people, right? I think both of us have this desire, like we wake up and we have these comments saying, hey, thanks so much. This tutorial helped me with my project or with my work project. And that just feels really good. But I'm wondering, beyond that obvious one, what was your motivation to start creating content?
Yeah, so I think it's a really good question. And my transparent answer is I don't know if there was one like big light bulb epiphany thing where I could say like, well, this was the main guiding North Star. I think there's three things, of one of which you touched on already. So that being helping people and just a satisfaction of lending a helping hand to someone who's studying or learning or gets stuck somewhere with some nitty gritty error in a tutorial or what have you. The second piece, I think, is community. Community is a big part in terms of, so I think at least, I think when you're learning something, especially in the world of developers, there's what we call like tutorial hell, right? Where people just go tutorial to tutorial, and there's no place where people can ask questions, whether they're technical or not. And when I say or not, one thing that a lot of people are interested in is, okay, I'm learning how to code. I know how to code now. What do I do now? Do I make an app? How do I make an app? Is it worth it? Do I get a job? Right? All of the peripheral questions that are naturally, I think, tied to tech. And I think building a community is so key to not allow just myself to answer those, but for people to support each other, learn from each other, and grow from each other. And I think that goes that the credit for that goes to YouTube being a platform where people with similar interests can come together and at least meet, and then for iOS Academy and myself to hopefully triage that into a community where those who want to be active are active, and those who want to be silent learners and listeners can also partake. And then the final thing that I'll get at is some people might not know, I myself learned iOS from YouTube way back when. I definitely did not go to university, my undergraduate career, that is, for computer science. I did learn myself through, cobbled together articles online many years ago and some very few YouTube videos. And I think I have always felt I wanted to give back, not in just a sense of feeling good from, one comment to someone, fixing something or finding something, but these platforms are growing, tech is growing, and really making a one-stop shop resource for people to get their feet wet and go as far as they want to go with iOS.
Yes, I love that. My answer is actually very, very similar to yours. So it's kind of interesting how we both came to it in a similar way. I have one additional thing I'll add though, is I kind of had three reasons as well. Number one, which is the one that's a little bit different maybe, is actually more focused on competition. And what I mean by that is like, I would go back to like 2017, 2018, before I was on YouTube at all, and I would look up Android tutorials as like a way, hey, like I don't understand this concept, like does YouTube help? And I would find these videos on YouTube which had like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of views, and they were just so bad. Like it was some guy who had a screen capture with a really small font, I could hardly read it, and oftentimes no audio, or there'd be like this EDM music playing in the background, just like too loud. Or if there was the guy speaking, it'd be in some like very thick accent, I could hardly understand what he or she was saying. And so part of my motivation, which maybe is not a good motivation, but that's really what helped me like go the extra mile to say I want to publish a video, which is I knew 100% that I could do better than what I saw over there. And I thought, okay, if 100,000 people are getting value out of this video, I know for sure I can make a better video than this. I can explain it with more density. I can make my audio way better. I can provide some more context about why you're doing something a certain way. And I thought that's like a really good way to like provide value to people. Like I know I could do better. So that was one big thing. And the other thing, touching on what you were talking about with the community, that was huge. Like one thing that I really think about in terms of my career progression and career growth is that you want to put yourself in a position such that you can get lucky. And I feel like if you have that community, or if you have that audience of people who know you and trust you, you will automatically find ways to get lucky. Like honestly, like our collaboration is an example of that, right? Like we were able to connect because we have this community on YouTube, and we said, hey, why don't we talk and why don't we collaborate? Maybe our audiences can benefit. And so that's a really good example of like this conversation would never have happened if not for our investment in content creation. And I think the way you build up that audience or build up that community is that you have to just be consistent about putting out high quality content for free over a long period of time. And that's how you get people to know you and trust you. And then you can use that goodwill to like get feedback, to iterate on other products or ideas and things like that. There's a ton of benefit. And then the third thing, which I think you also mentioned, is around learning, right? There's no better way to learn a topic or learn a concept rather than teaching it. So honestly, what I do, I don't even know half the things I teach. It's like, if I want to build this tutorial or I want to understand this concept, let me teach it. And that will force me to really go deep in the research and go deep in the kind of pros and cons of different approaches and explain it to people. And that's like helped me quite a bit in terms of my own confidence of building things. And I've been able to apply that back to my day job to grow faster.
Yeah. That's so funny you mentioned that. I actually do the exact same thing with, teaching or making a tutorial or video on something that, I might not be, the strongest in or an expert in. It's funny, I'll get comments sometimes of people saying like, how do you know all this stuff? And I'll reply and say, because I had documentation opened up on the right-hand side that you didn't see. But yeah, I mean, I think competition is interesting. I think you were more transparent in it. I'll also share, competition was definitely a part of it for myself as well. I think there's a lot of room both for Android and iOS and just, tutorials and tech videos in general where people can learn a lot of value to provide. And, things get outdated and getting updated videos and content, whether technical or otherwise, I think it's important. And there is a ton of opportunity there for people to benefit and learn. And that certainly, helps your career, and the harder you work, the luckier you get. That's something I try to live by very routinely. So plus one of that.
Yeah, and actually that's a really good point about the evergreen content. Like when I say competition, I don't mean it to be like I'm an Android developer on YouTube and another person's an Android developer, and now like you have to pick who's better. It's not like that at all. I think that there's a ton of opportunity for many people. I encourage everyone watching, just like try out a tutorial, publish it. Like let me or Afraz know, and we'd love to like give you feedback or give you a thumbs up. I think that everyone is on a different part of their journey in terms of learning and teaching. And so the way I explain something, even though I think it's good, if you explain it in a different way as an iOS developer, maybe other people will click with that in a different way. And so I feel like there's a ton of opportunity from that perspective. And the other thing is like the evergreen content, right? Like Android and iOS, the platforms that we're familiar with, they change so rapidly year over year. And so when I saw something from 2018, that's going to be in many ways not as relevant today as it was back then. And so I feel like there's a ton of opportunity. There's always a need for smart people to explain things. And so that's one question I have for you. How do you decide what content to create, especially with iOS being like it changes a lot every couple of years? Do you try and focus on content which will stay more evergreen? Or do you kind of just pick, app tutorials that you think are going to be interesting to people right now?
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. I would say I have a three-pronged philosophy around this, which sounds a lot more formal than it actually is in my head. So part one or piece one, I think, would be, you know, very much so unpolished opinions. And I'll give you an example of that. People have these like hard hitting questions like, do I learn Swift UI or UI kit, right? Like, what UI framework is better? Like, what ways of networking is better? So I'll make opinion videos based on that, which I think they're evergreen in the sense of they're not, based in facts by any mean. They're highly subjective. But my goal of those types of videos is to shed some light into one perspective, that being mine, and kind of how I reason about it. And hopefully that allows whoever's watching to form their own opinion, whether it's the same as mine or different. That's entirely subjective. And that's the point of the video, right? To kind of get at that person to think about it. The second piece is things that are very much so easy to get started with, but difficult to ramp up on.
Mm.
So things that are so I think generally when there's multiple kinds of viewers, right? There's people that have never touched code in their life. There's people that have touched it maybe 3 years ago and they want to do something meaningful with it now. And I think catering to that audience is something that I find very fruitful in terms of just helping people, but also bringing people into that community that we were talking about, right? Things like beginner videos with Swift UI, beginner videos of just like the most basic of things like buttons and table views, recycler views, right? Technical topics that on the surface are not the simplest to start with. And the third thing is, I like what I call like riskier type videos where, I'll pick a topic that I think is interesting or relevant for whatever reason. For example, new iOS 15 stuff, which is the latest hotness in the world of iOS. And I'll go with that, right? One reason, like you mentioned, it's a good opportunity for me to teach myself with, docs opened up on the right and then record something on the left as well. And I don't know if you got a chance to take a look at them, but sometimes if I like make a mistake or screw up in my videos, I make sure not to edit it out. And I think that's a big misconception that I've seen some other creators do where, like recording and like making a mistake here and there and debugging live and in action. I've always thought that's extremely valuable. And I've gotten feedback from others that they, figure that is valuable as well in the sense of nobody writes perfect code most of the time. Everyone has dumb typos where they forget a semicolon. So, seeing that in action is helpful. But those are the three pieces. Super curious to hear how you reason about your content.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, way more structured than my approach to thinking about what videos to make. I think for me, it's pretty simple. It's just like, okay. I think for me, the primary driver is, do I want to learn about this? Like, will I be able to also get some benefit? And do I feel like this is not being serviced correctly or to the extent that I would like in existing videos? Kind of going back to that competition idea. There's one more layer though, which I think is also important, which is that I've had the privilege of also being able to teach a couple different Android classes. Like at CodePath, I taught a couple times, and then most recently at Stanford, where I teach a class about Android. And so a lot of the content I make is also from the perspective of, can I actually use this video as part of a cohesive curriculum in the Android class that I'm teaching? One other quick thing here. How did you decide what to name your channel? Because yours is called iOS Academy, so it doesn't have your name in it at all. Mine is called my name, Rahul Pandey. How did you decide that versus putting your actual identity in there?
Yeah, this is actually something a few people have asked me, and I don't know how I actually decided it. I think when I think back now, the story which sounds the most accurate in my head is I think I tried. So I did try doing YouTube before many years ago, and I had a big challenge of just consistency with it. And when I started doing iOS videos again for like the 15th time, 2 years ago now, I think one thing that I tried to focus on a lot is be very very pigeonholed to iOS. Don't try to be very broad. So it was iOS Academy, right? This is the one-stop shop. You go here, you find an iOS thing. Whether or not, I put a lot of thought into growth and, branching out and whether or not it should be my name. And especially given what we just talked about of, injecting the personality. I think, it's interesting. I could always change it. But one thing that I have seen on Twitter and social media is building a brand identity does go a long way in terms of, quality, in terms of having something that's a separate entity than yourself. So let's say, I wanted to start doing just tech related short videos. I could do, another channel, which is myself. Now, lately I have started to inject myself more so. I don't particularly try to stay super anonymous with me being the person behind iOS Academy. But yeah, I mean, that's just kind of how things have played out. Maybe the channel name will change in the future. I think community wise, the branding has helped as well. And in the sake of, this is a place for people that are passionate about iOS, but I don't know. Time will tell.
There are definitely pros and cons to naming your channel based on the topic that you cover largely versus like naming it based on you. But I think for me, I was actually very deliberate that I didn't want to name my channel like Android content or like, Android Academy, for example, because I wanted to be very clear that I'm an Android developer right now and I love being an Android developer. I love talking about it, but our careers are long. And in 5 years, 10 years, I frankly can't tell you if I'm going to still be an Android developer. And so if you subscribe to my channel, I want you to subscribe to me because I'll be changing and evolving and growing over time. And there's a lot of other things I care about. Like I'd love to help you with your career in tech, even if it's beyond Android. And so I just felt like having the channel be my name, like me, meant that I could be a little bit more flexible with, creating other types of content as I change and evolve in the future.
I don't know if you're familiar with the channel Fireship. He's it's an amazing channel, amazing Firebase videos. And I think the guy's name is Jeff Delaney. He has his own YouTube channel too, but man, he's built an amazing community around Firebase and Fireship, and it's looked to be working out pretty well for him. So pros and cons, I think it's very subjective and goals and flexibilities.
Yeah, totally. So what I wanted to talk about now is I think we're both kind of unique in that we have these fairly demanding day jobs, right? Microsoft and Facebook, but we still are fairly consistent about putting out content on YouTube that we think will help people. I wonder, do you feel like it's a trade-off where because you're putting a lot of time into creating content for YouTube or like running iOS Academy, do you feel like you're not able to put in enough time at your Microsoft job, or do you feel like there's synergy between the two? Because in that you're actually doing better at Microsoft because you're learning a lot more in iOS Academy. Like what's the interaction between the two?
Yeah, no, it's a good question too. So I would say the latter. I would say there's a lot of synergy. So the way I think about, and this is agnostic of YouTube or working a day job, I like to prioritize things into like buckets. My life is one big Jira board, basically. So I have like my P1s, right? My top priorities, where these are the things that if there's multiple of them, they absolutely should not be, trade-offs from one another. Quality of one should not be degraded by higher quality of another. Then there's these like P2 things where you got to think more about, okay, I have limited time. I got to trade off one thing and do the other. Or both of them get lower quality. Then third things are just totally backburnered. So for iOS Academy and Microsoft, what I wanted to do was, and what has ended up playing out quite nicely is the time that I have in the evenings and the weekends. I used to load up videos and schedule them like a month out. So, some weekends were just like nonstop videos and, being completely transparent, like some of them were not fun, but I knew fairly early, had I not, built up somewhat of a library, I would need to start doing videos, during weekdays, sometimes after long days where I really didn't want to do it. And I would just do it with low quality. So I think time management there, loading up on a weekend, evenings, I think is important. And in terms of the synergy aspect, the channel, I think, has gotten to the point where it's not huge, but it's, I think we're hovering around like 33,000 subs and it's like 250,000 views a month. And I very consistently now at work get messages from, just like people I don't know from across the company that find my videos. And I remember the day that, some folks on my team, my manager included, accidentally found one of my videos. And I was like, wow, this is the most embarrassing thing ever. But it's my first, subtle joke was at least SEO is working, which is good. But I think, it's helping people and it's letting me meet more people in iOS and also allowing me to learn the same thing that I do in my day job. So it's synergy, I think is an awesome word to describe it. And I think I was very fortunate in that regard where, a lot of my work revolves around iOS, and I super enjoy it, and I'm able to do that in both my day job and evenings and weekends.
Yeah, same story for me. I think that when I got that first message from a coworker saying, "Hey, like your video popped up," I was like, I was kind of shocked. I was like, "Oh man, this is a little bit embarrassing," but also I'm really happy that you found it. And yeah, I think certainly when I do the research for a YouTube video, I will often that is like one of the rare times when I leave the bubble of this big corporate world where like a lot of my time at my day job is spent in internal wikis, or like looking up Facebook documentation, right? And so I feel like it's actually quite refreshing, and I get a lot more ideas about how to approach problems when I'm doing YouTube stuff. So I feel like 100% agree on the synergy between the two. Do you have any parting words of wisdom in terms of, like encouragement to get into content creation or anything else you want to share?
Oh man, words of wisdom, putting me on the spot. I didn't prepare for this. Okay. Yeah, no, great chatting. I think it's really interesting to see, the tech community, the tech growth community that you've been building out, as well as just getting a chance to chat. Words of wisdom. That was my buffer to think of words of wisdom. I think the biggest part is if you really want to build, content, a community around content, and you want to get started, take the plunge. It's so cliche, but people are going to have something to say about the content you put out regardless. You really just got to do it, and you'll see how you feel about it once you've done it. Be mindful of risk management. And what I mean by that is, like you don't necessarily have to quit your job and go all into one thing. You can take baby steps, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And you can also do that while taking the plunge, right? They're not two things that are mutually exclusive. Put out a video, might be cringy. A lot of mine certainly are, and you'll figure out if it's right for you. And yeah, I mean, appreciate you having me. Awesome conversation, and hopefully those words were enough wisdom for everyone watching.
No, I love that wisdom. Take the plunge, and then you're gonna get feedback. You're gonna get better and better, and that's how I think we've operated, and I think it's worked out. So I really enjoyed our conversation. I will leave links to iOS Academy and your website in the description. But yeah, thanks so much for being here, and looking forward to seeing what happens.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me again. Great chatting.
Bye.